the Bhagavatam. We've been talking about Prahlad, a young boy, a highly evolved young boy, I should say, and his teachings. That's what we're going to go into today. So Prahlad brings us to a very important question. What is the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Knowledge is information. And we live in a time when knowledge is considered to be the epitome of life. I mean, Google and all these, different search engines try to bring us knowledge at our fingertips. When I went to school, we were taught to memorize knowledge, books, and repeat the information in exams. I was in India at the time. And such learning, unfortunately, has become redundant in the age of computers. Information is now available at a moment's notice. So, has education become redundant too? What should we teach our children? What can we teach them in the age of Google? It's quite a dilemma. What did no one teach us that would have transformed our lives? What is beyond knowledge? That is wisdom. Wisdom is the understanding of how to live our lives in a way that enriches our being. All our knowledge in present day time has been about external things. Our science has been about matter, how to manipulate matter from physics, from chemistry, from technology, how to speak and communicate, but all of that so that we can manipulate the material world and try to squeeze as much as we can out of it. Unfortunately, as brilliant as this knowledge is, it doesn't tell us how to live. It doesn't tell us how to be happy. It doesn't tell us what will nourish our heart, our mind, our body, our soul. To get that knowledge, we have to go into people and tap into people who have real wisdom. And that wisdom never grows old. It's never outdated. Unlike our computers, which become outdated a few years in, or our phones, or our technologies, this wisdom never gets outdated. It is, in fact, eternal knowledge. And it is that knowledge that we are tapping into here. It is that knowledge that Prahlad, the young boy, was giving to his friends. To bring that wisdom is the purpose of this channel, to illuminate, to dispel our illusions, to open our eyes to our blind spots, the things we cannot see, even though they're right in front of us. What Prahlad will talk about in the episode that is coming up in front of us is not something that you don't know. It will actually touch into a deep knowing that you have within you. It's like the obvious. Wisdom is actually dealing with that which is obvious, but which no one's talking about. That which is obvious, that is right in front of us, that we have not been trained to see. So the wise person, the guru, the teacher, opens our eyes to the truth. And the truth is not something that is subjective, but is true for everyone. Prahlad learned from his guru while he was in the womb, when in the womb of his mother. And this amazing wisdom that he gained is what he now tries to impart to his friends. Of course, you know the backstory. I hope you've watched some of the earlier episodes. If you have, you'll know how his father tried to kill him, because Prahlad was a great devotee of God, because he loved God, and his father, being an atheist, or rather a demonic person, hated God. And when he found that his son was in love with God, he wanted to kill him. He could not tolerate this. It was too much. His father was an arrogant, egotistical king. Everything had to be done his way. People had to follow him, and if they didn't, they were expendable, including his own son. So Prahlad's teachers proposed that they would change his mind. They would brainwash him, and they would make him turn away from God. However, when the teachers would go home, to attend to their household affairs, Prahlad's fellow students would call him to play. And Prahlad, who was very learned, would address his friends, his classmates in very sweet language. And he would, being very compassionate, he would smilingly teach them about the uselessness of the materialistic way of life. The children, who were very affectionate and respectful to Prahlad, they surrounded him and sat down to listen. Their hearts and eyes were fixed upon him. They looked with great earnestness to learn from this incredible being. Prahlad was, although he was born in a family of asuras or demonic people, he was an exalted devotee of God and desired their welfare. So he instructed his fellow students about the wisdom of life, the science of self-realization, and how to become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Join us as we explore some of these topics through the ancient wisdom of the Vedas, revealed to us by some of the wisest people who ever lived on this planet. So as I was saying, Prahlad, right? I'm going to show you a few pictures of Prahlad and his father and of the kids and so on and so forth to get you acquainted with the story and caught up with what we've been talking about in the last few episodes. So here we have Prahlad's father, Hiranyakashipu, trying to kill his son. Well, actually, for right now, he's inquiring from him, but later on, he goes on to try to, get him to conform. And in that point, he sends his servants to poke him and jab him with tridents and try to kill him even. There are snakes there. You can see there's a bed of snakes there, and they've got trying to get the snakes to poison him. But Prahlad is so fixed in his meditation and his complete trust in the divine, in God, that nothing bothers him. Nothing. He sees within each of these characters who come to harm him, he sees the divine within them. He sees God in each of them. And so he's unafraid. And when he's unafraid, even snakes don't harm you. They try to throw him off a cliff. And even then, Krishna comes there and holds him, protects him. They try to burn him in oil. They do all kinds of things to torture him. And Prahlad is unaffected, always meditating and thinking about his beloved Krishna. Then Prahlad, his teachers try to say that they can reform him. And so Prahlad is now in school and he starts instructing his friends what he had learned from his guru while he was in the womb of his mother. And let's learn more about that. So Prahlad tells his friends, one who is sufficiently intelligent, I love this languaging. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of life from the tender age of childhood to practice spirituality. Think about it. If you and I, from a very young age, had been taught about spirituality, how different would our lives have been? And especially the kind of knowledge you're now about to receive here. When we finish talking, think about it, come back to the beginning and say, what if I had got this knowledge when I was a child? How would it have changed my life? So Prahlad says, the human body is most rarely achieved. See, the Vedas tell us that there are 8,400,000 species of beings, from animals and birds to humans, so many different species. Now, I don't think all of them exist right now. Many might have been wiped out due to all our material progress that has caused about such devastation on the planet. But yeah, durlabham manusham janma, that the human form of life is very rarely achieved. One goes through all these different species to come to the human form of life. And the human form of life is meant to be used for spiritual growth. If you've been feeling that urge within you, I need to find out, I need to understand why I'm here, what life's all about, What is God? What is the soul? What is all that? I used to have questions like that. And if you've been seeking like that, then you are now about to fulfill the purpose of human life. So he says, the human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary, like other bodies, I mean animal bodies and insect bodies, and all that, so it's temporary, yet it is meaningful because in human life, one can understand who am I and who is God. And one can begin the process of not only understanding, but acting according to that understanding or serving that supreme being. Developing a loving relationship with that being. See, most people now think in terms of that source, as they call it, the universe, as impersonal. But to deny it the ability, to deny that which we came from, the ability to be personal, is to take away one of the most beautiful things in life. Imagine if you and I were not personal. How could we interact with each other? If you and I were just an energy, what kind of relationship could we have? How would we communicate? What would it be like? But it is because we have incarnated in this form that now we can see each other, even though we are souls and infinitesimal and invisible to the senses. Yet now in this form we can see each other. And because of this form, we can communicate with each other. And so it is with that which we call God, or the source, or universe, whatever term you want to use. It is not limited. You cannot limit God to being impersonal. All things are possible. God is a person and not a person. God exists and does not exist. All things are true simultaneously. Because we're the ones who want to do either or, either my God or your God, either my way or your way. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. That's the mind. And the mind wants to put everything into little boxes. My way is better than your way. My God is better than your God. It's like little kids. My daddy is better than your daddy. My car is better than your car. You know how kids are? So as adults, as human beings, we tend to continue doing the same nonsense. The Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 40, says the same thing. It says, even a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So he says, any kind of spiritual advancement you make will never be lost, will be eternal growth, eternal progress that you would have made. That is your greatest asset. That is your greatest wealth, your spiritual advancement. And it begins here in this moment, listening to these incredible teachings and words by these wonderful souls like Prahlad. So Prahlad goes on to say, the human form of life affords one a chance to return home back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotion to the lotus feet of Vishnu. So Vishnu is the name for God in the Sanatan Dharma, in the Vedas. These are new terms for you. Please look into that. Veda means knowledge. So in the Vedic wisdom, God is referred to by the names of Vishnu, many names actually, Vishnu, Narayan, Hari, Vasudeva, and ultimately Krishna. That is the highest understanding of God. Then he says, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotion to the lotus feet of Vishnu. Devotional service is natural. Natural. It is natural for us to want to serve. It is natural for us to want to please another. Whether it's serving your children, whether it's serving your beloved, whether it's serving at work, doing the service that you do, the community, the society, the business that you're in, we're still serving. You got to serve somebody, right? If nothing else, you're going to serve your mind. You're going to serve your body, but you're always serving. You can't avoid it. Even a business person is serving their community. Even the people who are on YouTube and who are so-called influencers, they're serving their community. We're all serving someone or something. Ultimately, you're serving the government. And, if you're going to serve somebody, why not serve God? So devotional service means devotion to God. Devotional service, he says, is natural because Vishnu, the supreme personality of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all living beings. The happiness perceived with reference to sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life, according to one's past karmic activities. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. But let's take a look at this. The happiness we perceive with reference to sense objects by contact with the body. So you get some nice food, you want to eat it. You find someone that you like and you want to touch them, you want to hold them, make love to them. That happiness can be obtained in any form of life, meaning it can be done in an animal's form of life. Animals also eat, they also mate, they also enjoy their senses. So such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. Endeavors merely for sense gratification or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result in a loss of time and energy with no actual profit. Let's take a look at what he's saying. Endeavors merely for the gratification of the senses or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in the loss of time and energy with no actual profit. You can see what nonsense. How is that possible? The profit is there. I'm supporting myself. I have a house. I have a car. I eat good food. I wear nice clothes. That's profit. That's the benefit. Come on. How can he say such things? What he's telling you is this, that it's only a matter of time. We're here for a few years. At the end of those few years, we leave all of this behind. So where is the profit? What did you take with you? Even if you became a multimillionaire, even if you gained the greatest wealth on earth, what did you take with you when you leave this body? Nothing. And when you go into your next life, you will go back with nothing. So all your endeavors came to nothing. Now, certainly we'll enjoy our senses, and certainly we will seek some material happiness, and certainly we need economic development. So it's not black and white. What he's actually telling you is that your focus of life needs to be self-realization and the awakening of an inherent love for God. That's at the heart of it. If that's your focus, then everything else is okay. But if your focus is simply to enjoy your senses, to be happy at any cost and to do whatever it takes, then you've wasted your life. He continues, if one's endeavors are directed towards Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, one can attain the spiritual platform of self-realization. There is no such benefit from engaging oneself in economic development. Therefore, while in material existence, a person fully competent to distinguish wrong from right must endeavor to achieve the highest goal of life, as long as the body is stout and strong and not embarrassed by dwindling. So I'm sure you're having thoughts. I'm sure you're having questions. I'm sure you're wondering about these things. Please write your comments in the chat. I will happily take up all of your questions, your doubts, your concerns at the end of the talk. And if you're watching this later on, then please write down in the comment and I will be glad to answer afterwards. But please make it a point. It really helps with being able to communicate with each other. Share your thoughts. Don't keep them to yourself. It's not worth it. Then he says, every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years. But for those who cannot control their senses, half those years are completely lost at night by sleeping. So he's taking 12 hours. Maybe you sleep 8 hours. But when we sleep, we're in ignorance. Therefore, he says, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. You've lost half the time in sleeping. In the tender age of childhood, when everyone is bewildered, one passes 10 years. Similarly, in boyhood or girlhood, when you're engaged in sporting and playing or chasing after the opposite sex, one passes another 10 years. In this way, 20 years are wasted. Similarly, in old age, when one is an invalid, unable to perform even material activities, one passes another 20 years wastefully. So you've got 50 years lost in sleep, 20 years lost in childhood, 20 years lost in old age, and that leaves you with 10 years, right? I know it's very simple math, but try and get the point. One whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires. Now, this insatiable lusty desires is very important to understand. It's not just about lust for sex. It's a lust for enjoyment, a lust for pleasure, a lust for happiness, a lust for acquisition. All of that comes under the category of lust. Lust means desire, wanting. Why do we want what we want? Because we think that when we get what we want, it will make us happy. That we'll somehow feel fulfilled, that we'll somehow be, satisfied. But we're never satisfied, and we're never fulfilled, and we're never really happy. The happiness we have is momentary. When you buy that thing that you want, and you're with that person that you want, you're happy for a moment. And then the problems start and things go wrong. And now you got to figure out how to do whatever it takes to be with that person, or to drive that car, or to, take care of the house as it starts having problems. All of that. So all of that is from the insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. In such a person's life, the remaining years are also wasted, because even during those years, he cannot engage himself in devotion to God. What person too attached to household life due to being unable to control his senses can liberate himself? So he's saying a person who is too attached to this material world, to the things of the world, will be unable to control his or her senses, and therefore will be unable to liberate himself. See, control of the senses is vital. If I don't control my senses, then I will not have even proper conduct. I mean, just to stop myself from going out and grabbing something that belongs to another, I have to control my senses. I can't go to a restaurant and lean over and grab what someone else is eating and start eating that. No, it's unacceptable. What to say of someone's possessions, or what to say of someone's body. You can't just go out and grab whatever you want. You can't go to a store and pick up things and just walk out. You have to control your senses. Your senses might want to do whatever, but you have to control them. Likewise, you have to control your mind. And if you're not able to control your mind and senses, then you're in trouble. This applies to all of us. And certainly, not only, you won't be able to live happily in society or in the world, but you will not be able to liberate yourself from the world. An attached householder, he says, is bound very strongly by ropes of affection for his family. Money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. Right? Money is sweeter than honey. That's how most people think. They'll do anything for money. You want me to lie? You want me to cheat? I'll do anything. That's how we live. That's how we've been programmed. That this is the most important thing in life, is to make as much money as possible. And the one who has the most money wins. That's the one we say is successful. That's the one we say is important. That's the one who can get their way. That's the one who can get things done. Now, it is true, but it's a losing game. It appears to be true. So therefore, the Vedas tell us that there is happiness which appears like nectar in the beginning, but turns to poison in the end. That happiness is in the mode of ignorance, which appears like nectar, meaning it's wonderful in the beginning, and then it turns to poison, meaning it works against you. And there is happiness which appears like poison in the beginning. It's hard work, but it has sweet rewards. It turns to nectar in the end. So any kind of hard work that you do then produces a good result. That's that kind of happiness. And happiness in the mode of ignorance, you're neither happy doing it nor you're happy with what you get out of it. But real happiness is even beyond all of this. Real happiness is causeless. It is not connected to any singular activity. It is not because of something you do. It is not because of something somebody else does. Real happiness has no cause. It is spontaneous. It arises from within. As such, you might say everything arises from within. All kinds of happiness arise from within. All kinds of unhappiness arise from within. But it is not the product of your mind. See, usually if you get what you want, then you are happy. So that's what your mind wants, not what you want really. And if you don't get what your mind wants, then you're unhappy. Of course, if you get what your body wants, the same thing applies. Real happiness is what the soul wants. You, the real self, the soul, what you want at the deepest level, that gives you the real happiness. And that happiness is an eternal happiness. That happiness, once you have tasted it, you will not give it up for billions of dollars. When you have tasted that happiness, you will not give it up for anything of this world. So he goes on. Who can give up the desire to accumulate money? Right? So he says money is sweeter than honey for most people. And therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money? Thieves, soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money even by risking their very dear lives. How can a person who is most affectionate to family, the core of his heart being always filled with their pictures, give up their association? If a wife is very kind and sympathetic and always pleases her husband in a solitary place, how can he give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear. Their affectionate parents always think of their sweet words. How can they give up their children's association? One's elderly parents and one's sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who could give up that association? Aside from this, in household affairs, there are many decorated items of household furniture. There are also animals and servants. Who would give up such comforts? Think about it. It's most difficult. It's the most difficult thing to do for all of us. He says the attached householder is like a silkworm which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out, simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue. One is bound by material conditions. How can one escape? One who is too attached cannot understand that he is wasting his valuable life for the maintenance of his family. He also fails to understand that the purpose of human life, which is meant for realization of the absolute truth, is being imperceptibly spoiled. So he's not saying don't have a family, don't have a house, don't have the things of the world. No. But don't make that the goal of your life. I hope that point is being very clear, because that's otherwise to just think it's an either or, again, is to miss the point. The purpose of human life is meant for realization of the absolute truth. And if one is not using it for that purpose, then one's life is being imperceptibly spoiled. Such a person who is ignoring this absolute truth is very cleverly attentive to seeing that not a single penny is lost by mismanagement. Thus, although an attached person in material existence always suffers from threefold miseries, that is, miseries caused by one's own body and mind, miseries caused by other people, and miseries caused by nature. So even though he always suffers from threefold miseries, he does not develop a distaste for the way of material existence. If a person too attached to the duties of family maintenance is unable to control his senses, the core of his heart is immersed in how to accumulate money. Although he knows that one who takes the wealth of others will be punished by the law of the government and by the laws of Yamaraj after death, he continues cheating others to acquire money. Oh, my friends, in this material world, even those who apparently advance in education have the propensity to consider this is mine and that is for others. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families, just like uneducated cats and dogs. They are unable to take to spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. Now, if this is heavy and hard to take a deep breath, because it isn't easy to hear these words. These are words of detachment. These are words that cause us to break out of the spell of Maya, of illusion, that has us in its grip. To break out of that cocoon that is woven around us, where we think we're safe and secure, but in fact none of us is. So by hearing these words of an enlightened being, of a highly evolved soul, gives us a chance to look for something greater, something higher. Most people don't tell us these things. My dear friends, it is certain that no one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Godhead has been able to liberate himself from material bondage at any time or in any country. Who? No one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme has been able to liberate himself. So in other words, this knowledge is what will help you liberate yourself from material bondage. Because without it, he says, no one has been able to liberate themselves from material bondage at any time or in any country. Those bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Being are bound by the material laws. They are addicted to sense gratification and are playthings in the hands of attractive women or men. Victimized by such a conception of life, they are surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and thus they are shackled to material bondage. Those who are very much addicted to this way of living are called asuras, atheists, or demons. Therefore, although you are sons of asuras, stay away from such persons and take shelter of the Supreme Godhead Narayan, because the ultimate goal of life for all living beings is liberation from the bondage of material existence. Narayan is the original father of all living entities. There are no impediments to pleasing him or worshipping him, whether one is a child or an old person. The relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Godhead is always a fact. It means it always exists. It's not something you have to create or find or become or achieve. It's always been there. And therefore there is no difficulty in pleasing him. The Supreme Godhead is the supreme controller. Although he is one, he is present everywhere and in everyone. He is the cause of all causes, the source of everything, who is present as the observer in the heart of all living entities. He is Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Therefore, my dear friends, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your atheistic, demonic nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them and becoming their well-wisher. We devotees always glorify the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore we need not ask for anything from him in terms of dharma, kama, artha, and moksha. Meaning, we don't ask for being taken care of, or money, or enjoyment, or even liberation. because we depend on the divine. We surrender. We allow ourselves to be cared for and nurtured and nourished. And he does. It's the amazing reality of life. I received this knowledge which is called Bhagavat Dharma. Bhagavat Dharma. That is different from all the other kinds of dharma. Bhagavat Dharma is that dharma or that duty or that occupation that is in alignment with the divine, Bhagavan. So I received this knowledge which is called Bhagavat Dharma from the great sage Narad. It is based on logic, philosophy, and is completely scientific. It is free from all material contamination. So now the question is, how did Prahlad, who was born in the family of Hiranyakashipu, who was an atheist, a demonic person, very cruel, very nasty, very hateful of all creatures, how did Prahlad learn about God, about Vishnu? So now we're going to the backstory. He says here, when my father Hiranyakashipu went to Mandrachal mountain to execute severe austerities, in his absence, the devas, the demigods, headed by King Indra, attempted to destroy all the asuras, the demons. They thought that Hiranyakashipu, who was one of the main demonic characters, who had terrorized everyone, was about to be destroyed by his own bad karma. So the devas, the demigods, they thought, oh, good. Now he's going off. He's going to be destroyed by his own bad karma. He's, we don't have to worry about him. And they were so successful at killing the demons that the demons fled in all directions. They left behind everything, their homes, their wives, their children, their animals, their household paraphernalia. Now, many people think demons refers to some kind of weird character like out of Hollywood movies. No, that's not what we're talking about here. Here we're talking about people who do not follow dharma. They do not follow the ways of God. They follow whatever they think they want to do. They're more or less atheists, and they believe in them. They have no compassion. They just do whatever they want for themselves. They're self-centered, greedy, arrogant, egotistical, all of that. And we're seeing a lot of that in today's time. So it is, we are amongst that. That is the civilization that we've created now. Anyways, the demigods were so successful at killing the asuras, the demons, that they fled in all directions. They left behind everything. The victorious demigods plundered the palace of Hiranyakashipu. Remember, he had first stolen it from Indra and then they took it back. They destroyed everything within it and arrested my mother, Prahlad's mother, the queen, Hiranyakashipu's wife. As she was being led away, at this point, of course, Prahlad was not born. He was still in the womb of his mother. As she was led away, crying in fear, the great sage Narad appeared on the scene. He always does. He's always in time somehow. And he said to Indra, because now the devas, the demigods, had taken over everything and they were taking away the wife of Hiranyakashipu. He says, "O Indra, O king of the devas, this woman is certainly sinless. You should not drag her off in this merciless way. She is the wife of another. You must immediately release her." King Indra said, "In the womb of this woman, the wife of the demon she is the wife of the demon Hiranyakashipu, and within her womb is his seed. Let her remain in our custody until her child is delivered, and then we will release her." The sage Narad replied, "The child within this woman's womb is a great devotee, a powerful devotee of Vishnu, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you will not be able to kill him." After much conversation, then Indra released my mother, that is Prahlad speaking. The demigods then circumambulated her because of the great devotee who was within her womb, and Narad took her to his ashram. So Narad, being a sage, didn't have a home as usual, as most people do. He had a small little ashram. He took her there. He assured her of all protection, saying, "My dear child, please remain here until the arrival of your husband." Then Prahlad says, "My mother, desiring the safety of her embryo being Prahlad himself, desired to give birth after her husband's arrival. She stayed at Narad Muni's ashram, where she rendered service unto the great sage with utmost devotion. Narad, who is extremely kind to fallen souls, instructed my mother and me while I was in her womb. A long duration of time passed. So this was for many years that she was there in the ashram of Narad. And in time, she forgot these teachings. That's what Prahlad is saying. But I was blessed to remember. I learned from my Guru Narad that unlike the material body, which undergoes 6 changes: birth, existence, growth, transformation, dwindling, and then death, the soul remains unchanged. The word Atma refers to the Supreme Being and the living entity. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth, death, deterioration, and material contamination. They are individual observers and the foundation or cause of everything. See, the soul is no different than God in quality. In quality. This is very important to understand. The soul is qualitatively the same as God, just as a drop of water from the ocean is qualitatively the same as the ocean. However, a drop of water is not the same as the ocean. The ocean has a vastness, a depth, a power, a magnificence that the drop of water cannot claim. Likewise, we cannot claim to have the power, the glory, the incredible nature of God. We are an anksha. Anksha in Sanskrit means a tiny particle. We are literally infinitesimal particles of the divine, of God. When we clearly understand that, and yet we have all the qualities of God. See, we are qualitatively same and quantitatively vastly different. Okay, so he's saying that both the soul and God are actually observers. They are individual and they are the foundation or cause of everything. Everything that we is happening because there is a soul within this body. If there was no soul within this body, if the soul were to leave, this body would just drop down like a pair of clothes that you took off. That's it. It would have no more value. It would have no more meaning. It only has value because of the presence of the soul. The value of the body is nothing without the soul. With the soul, it is valuable. Without the soul, it has no value. So the real value is the soul. Similarly, the real value of the soul is God. Because without God, what is the meaning of soul? Who am I without God? So both the soul and God are free from material change. They are self-illuminated and all-pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body. Knowing this, one who is actually learned must give up the illusion that I am this body and that everything in relation to this body is mine. An expert geologist can understand where there is gold and can extract it from the gold ore. Similarly, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body, and thus by cultivating spiritual knowledge can attain perfection in spiritual life. With every soul there are 2 bodies. So all of us have 2 bodies. The physical body made of 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space. And the subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and ego. So there are 2 bodies. The gross body we leave behind at the time of death, but the subtle body goes with us to our next life. So he says here, one must find the soul by analysis. It's very interesting. This is a process that is very powerful and is used by many spiritualists. One must find the soul by analysis, saying, this is not it. This is not it. Meaning, naeti, naeti, naeti. Not this, not this, not this. What is not? My car is not me. My house is not me. My job is not me. I have a job. I have a car. I have a body. I have a mind. So I can't be any of those things. So as I'd say, this is not it. This is not it. This is not it. And then I separate from that and say, well, then what am I? once I take away all these trappings, peel off the onion, as they say, completely, and what is left, that which is left, is me, the soul. I am the subject. Everything else is the object. Even the body, even the mind, even my thoughts, even my emotions, my life story, they're all the object of the subject, me. Just as one perceives the presence of the air by the aromas it carries, so also intelligence can be perceived in 3 states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. When intelligence is polluted, one is subjected to the modes of nature and conditioned by them. So, what is the meaning of intelligence being polluted? It means that you think in terms of that which is false. You think this is me, this body is me. You identify with your thoughts and emotions. You identify with the world. So that's when your intelligence is polluted. And when the intelligence is polluted, one is subjected to the modes of nature and conditioned by them. Just as in a dream one may falsely suffer, so also the sufferings caused in wakefulness by material existence must be considered temporary. In other words, one who wakes up, one who is awakened, even if there is physical suffering, realize this is my body that is suffering, my body that is getting sick, my body that is going through some hardship. You know, sometimes now it gets very cold in winter. And then if you go out early in the morning, especially, go out, you want to do some meditation or chant, it can feel really, really cold. And yet we say, no, the body is going through this experience and it's okay, body. We'll take care of you. We'll make sure you're warm, but we're not going to stop what needs to be done for our spiritual growth. So we put the body through this hardship, not because we don't care, but because there is a higher purpose, because there is a greater endeavor to be able to focus one's mind, to practice focusing one's mind on the divine, on God. So with that in mind, we go through deliberately taking on difficult things. Sometimes it's fasting. Sometimes it's about, doing things that are inconvenient. Why? So that one may use the time to more effectively serve and connect with and love God. That's the point. Not to prove anything. And he will explain this in a bit. He says, devotion to the Supreme Being burns away the seed of karmic activities. Burns away the seed of karmic activities. Purifies the intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. In this way, one's ignorance is immediately dissipated. Of all the different processes recommended for disentanglement from material life, the performance of duties by which love for the Supreme Lord develops is considered to be the best. Why would that be so? This is such an important point to consider. Why is it that this process is so highly recommended? The performance of duties by which love for the Supreme Lord develops is considered to be the best. See, the fact is that we are in love with this world. We're in love with the people of this world, our family, our children, our pets, and the things of the world, our house, our objects of our possessions, and so on and so forth. We're in love with them. And if you say you're not, well, just see if something happens to any of them and see how worried and upset and angry you might be, or even scared. Look at all the emotions that would happen. And those emotions speak of the attachment. What to say if somebody dies, or if you lose something, or somebody takes something away from you. So though that speaks of our entanglement and speaks of our attachment, and we need to transfer that attachment, that love, that sense of belonging to the Supreme Being or God. And when we do that, then there is a gradual progression away from the attachment to the world, to the attachment to a higher power, to the attachment to that which is divine and God. That's the key. That is how we gradually let go of that which is of this world. By developing a higher taste, a higher attachment, a higher bonding, a higher sense of connection, a higher sense of love. So Prahlad says here, one should accept a bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him with great devotion and faith. In the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship God. One should always remember the Supreme Godhead as Paramatma is situated in the core of every living entity's heart. Thus one should offer respect to all beings. Not kill them and eat them, by the way. In this way, one can cut down the influence of lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and jealousy. Kama, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Matsarya, and attain the loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Through bhakti or devotional service, one can certainly control the senses and become liberated. When such a liberated devotee hears the pastimes of God, his hair stands on end on his body, and his tears fall. So he's giving now the symptoms of ecstasy that a liberated devotee who is truly in love with God experiences. When such a person hears the pastimes of the divine of God, his hair stands on end on his body, tears fall from his eyes, and in his spiritual ecstasy his voice falters. Sometimes he dances, sometimes he sings loudly, sometimes he cries. Thus he expresses his transcendental jubilation. He appears to be haunted by a ghost. He laughs and very loudly chants about the qualities of his beloved God. At times he becomes careless of social etiquette and loudly chants like a madman. O Krishna, O my Lord, O Master of the universe. He's just trying to convey this idea of the ecstasy that a person feels as one develops a greater and greater devotion towards God. The devotee is freed from all material contamination because he constantly thinks of the Lord's pastimes. Because of his intense devotional service, his ignorance, material consciousness, and all kinds of material desires are completely burnt to ashes. His mind and body are filled with spiritual qualities because he has achieved the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. This is a very important point. His mind and body are filled with spiritual qualities. So there's an actual transformation that starts to occur. And it's not by one's own doing. It's not that you attain spiritual qualities by trying to work on yourself, as most people think. No, it's not about doing the work in terms of fixing the qualities. This is not a car that you're trying to fix. It's not a phone that you're trying to improve. Spirituality is not about trying to attain something. That's what people do in the world. Material things are attained. Spiritual things are not attained. There is grace. You are blessed with that. The transformation occurs without your even realizing it. It happens because you have now released yourself from the attachment to the world, and you've created space within yourself for that divine presence to enter you and transform you from within. Try to absorb that idea. His mind and body are filled with spiritual qualities because he has achieved the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. The real problem of life is the repetition of birth and death, which is like a wheel rolling repeatedly up and down. This wheel, however, completely stops when one is in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one is completely liberated from material existence. Therefore, my dear friends, immediately begin meditating upon and worshipping the Supreme Being. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present as Paramatma, the Great Soul, in the heart of all living entities. He is the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, and there is no difficulty in worshipping him. Why then are people so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? One's riches, family members, residence, domestic animals, etc., and treasury, economic development, sense gratification, and even the lifetime in which one can enjoy all these material opulences are certainly temporary and flickering. Since the opportunity of human life is temporary, what benefit can these temporary material opulences give to a sensible person who has understood himself to be eternal? See, once you understand yourself to be eternal, everything shifts. And to understand yourself to be eternal, you have to understand that you are the soul and not a physical being. Right there, everything shifts. The Vedic literature state that by performing great sacrifices, one may be elevated to the heavenly planets. However, although life on the heavenly planets is hundreds and thousands of times more comfortable than life on Earth, the heavenly planets are not free from the taint of material existence. Life there is temporary. Therefore, one must not make that the goal of life. A materialistic person thinking himself very advanced in intelligence continually acts for economic development, but again and again he is frustrated by material activities, either in this life or the next. Indeed, the results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. The result one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. Think about it. So often you've thought, this will make me happy, but in the end, it didn't. This will fulfill me, but in the end, it didn't. That's the theme, and we keep chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. In this material world, every materialist desires to achieve happiness and diminish his distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. Listen very carefully. One is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress also begin. See, how do you know you're going to be happy? You know you're going to be happy when certain things happen, right? Oh, I'm going to be happy if this happens, if that happens. And if that doesn't happen, then now you're unhappy. So that's what he means. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions for distress also begin. Get it? So neither endeavor for happiness nor unhappiness. Do not endeavor to try to extract happiness from the world, because the world cannot give it to you. What will give it to you is right within you. And it is always happy, that part of you. A living entity desires comfort for his body and makes many plans for this purpose, but actually the body is the property of others. Indeed, the perishable body embraces the living entity and then leaves him aside. Since the body itself is ultimately meant to become stool or earth, what is the meaning of the paraphernalia related to the body? They are all so temporary. All this paraphernalia is very near and dear as long as the body exists, but as soon as the body is destroyed, all things related to the body are also finished. Therefore, actually, one has nothing to do with them, but because of ignorance, one accepts them as valuable. Compared to the ocean of eternal happiness, they are most insignificant. What is the use of such insignificant relationships for the eternal living being? The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing actions with that body creates another. Listen to this. The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing actions with that body creates another. So your karma is creating your next body. Your actions are creating your next body. Thus he transmigrates from one body to another, all through repeated birth and death, because of his gross ignorance. Therefore, dear friends, follow in the footsteps of the devotees and worship the Supreme Being Hari. He is the supreme controller, and every living entity is a manifestation of his energy. One who renders service to him will certainly be liberated from material existence. You cannot please him by becoming a perfect Brahmin or a priest. You cannot please him by becoming a demigod. You cannot please him by becoming a saint, or by becoming perfectly good in etiquette, or by vast learning. Neither charity, austerity, sacrifice, cleanliness, or vows can satisfy or please him. Only by unflinching, unalloyed devotion to him can he be pleased. What does unflinching mean? Unwavering. It's not like sometimes it's like love. When you love someone, And if you have unflinching love for that person, you're steady in your love, that's real love. Not someday, today I love you, tomorrow I don't know, I don't want to be with you. That's not unflinching. You're wavering. There is no sense of safety or security in such a relationship. So when only by unflinching, unalloyed means with no alloy, no mixture. I somewhat love you, but not totally, like these things I don't like and that I do like, but yeah, I wish you would do this or do that. You know how we try to change our partners and we want them to be different than who they are? That's alloyed. That's mixed up. But true, pure devotion, pure love is unalloyed. I accept you as you are. I love you as you are. I love everything about you. So unflinching, unalloyed devotion to him. Only through that can he be pleased. Without sincere devotion, everything is simply a show. My dear friends, everyone can revive their original eternal spiritual nature and exist forever simply by accepting the principles of bhakti yoga. In this material world, the ultimate goal of human life is to render service to the lotus feet of Govinda, or Krishna, the cause of all causes, and to see him everywhere. The sons of the demons appreciated the transcendental instructions of Prahlad and took them very seriously. They rejected the materialistic instructions given by their teachers, Shanda and Amarka. All right. The whole scene is about to blow up in the next episode, and it's going to be very, very thrilling. This is the teachings of Prahlad today. Next, we'll move into the story as to what happened next, because you can imagine that he's polluting the minds of all these kids, and it's going to blow up. So be there for the next episode, and I'll fill you in on that. Meanwhile, let's take up all your questions and see what folks have been coming up with. All right. Oh, Celie, you've got a lot of stuff here. Anybody else have any questions? Please write them down as well. I'd love to hear from all of you. If anyone's got anything, please write it down. Siri writes, I am a seeker, student, teacher, and lover of life on the path. True, we all serve and are being served by nature, by others, by this body and mind, by the way. Yep, absolutely. Okay. The math of Prahlad is very interesting. He talks about how we have a life of 100 years, and then we spend half that time sleeping. Not really, actually. He's talking of 12 hours sleeping, but okay, 8 hours. Take the bigger math, it's okay. 20 years of that life, 10 years, he says, is childhood, then 10 years is, teenage years. So we're still kind of like confused during that time. And then another 20 years is spent out of that 100. So 80 to 100 is spent in old age. And you really, maybe not think some people are in pretty bad shape at that time. So really speaking, if you took out 50 and then 20 and then another 20, you're down to 10 years. And he says that time too, you're spending in working and struggling and, trying to acquire things. And where is the time for your spirituality? How will you ever develop your spirituality? Okay. By grace, by destiny, yes. Oh, I think I should go back. And by way of karma, by grace, by destiny, by power of all that is. Yes, absolutely. We're all serving someone. And it is only by grace that we are able to evolve and come out of that. Through knowledge like this, and then ultimately through grace, that we become transformed and we're able to step out of this karmic cycle, this cycle of birth and death. Do not think that you can do it yourself. It is not easy. It is very difficult. There are yogis who definitely practice, and their practice can be successful, yes. But it's a do-it-yourself path. Whereas if you step into the path of bhakti or devotion to God, then there is grace that is offered to you. and blessings that you receive that help and transform you from within. Cosmic law of orders, including the law of vibration, cause, effect, correspondence, gender. See, I'm not familiar with those terms, really, so I'm going to okay. Yeah. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all your lovely questions. If there's anyone with any last minute things you'd like to ask, please feel free. For those of you that are watching later, please write your questions in the comments. Feel free to agree or disagree. Feel free to be as, challenged as you want to be, or as questioning as you want to be. Till next time, I'll see you then. Take care. Thank you, Silly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. Thank you. Deeply honor your presence, and thank you all who have been watching. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna.